Nicolas Cage is probably one of our generation's definitive actors.
Hello and welcome to Cage Fighting. It's your main man Andy Gillard here. Hope everyone's doing well in the world right now.
Hi everybody, Matt Guy here, ready to eat some humble pie.
And will that humble pie taste sweet? Hell yes it will. People other than me liking a Marvel film. This is going to be interesting actually. Hello everyone.
We hadn't penciled in to chat about Doctor Strange because I thought it'll just end up being me and Matt sort of not hating the film, but not being overly effusive about it, and you obviously loving it, Stu. And we've come out the other side like a little bit invigorated by it almost. It's quite an oddity of a film, this one. It sort of brought us all together for the first time ever, I think. So we're visiting the MCU for the first time in 2022. Well, on the big screen at least, that is. Bringing Benedict Cumberbatch back. That is a tongue twister. As the titular physician, this time saving all of the universes all over. It's a film which has generally been pretty well received. It's got a 75% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 7.4 on IMDb, picking up an opening weekend of $187 million in the United States alone. It is the 11th highest ever domestic opening in the United States. Not just of Marvel films, of all films that have ever been made. 11th. The worldwide total of the opening weekend was 448 million. It's been an absolute stunner. I genuinely didn't see that coming. There wasn't a lot of... the trailer didn't really excite me personally, and I don't think I saw a lot of people going into the film like really hyped about it. So that number is quite awesome. Obviously, my biggest personal draw to this film is that it's Sam Raimi returning, directing his first feature film in almost a decade. It's the first film he's done since 2013's Oz the Great and Powerful. I think what we'll do, though, we'll give a high-level overview of what we thought of the film. We'll only talk about what was in the trailer, so we won't spoil anything. And then we'll do a spoilery bit where we talk about a couple of characters that we can't talk about yet. But just check the podcast description because you might need to skip ahead when we get there. But we'll give you warning by that point. So before we get into Doctor Strange, I thought we should talk about what our 3 or 4 favourite MCU films or TV series are. Because this is one that's provoked a little bit more chat than I expected it to in our group. So I think if we can just say sort of what kind of Marvel film we generally go for, I think that might be a good place to start. Stu, when we did our top 5s, I remember Avengers was top 2, if I remember correctly, with yourself. So yeah, give me 2 or 3 more alongside there that you think are the best of the best when it comes to the MCU.
I mean, I have got my MCU rankings document here at hand.
Of course you have.
And I haven't actually put this in yet, so I'm not sure where it's going to go, to be honest.
Well, I'll ask you that at the end, so just tell me what you've got before Doctor Strange.
I'll go, my top 5 before I saw this was Infinity War at 5, Guardians of the Galaxy 4, Spider-Man No Way Home 3, Captain America Winter Soldier number 2, and Avengers brackets Assemble number 1.
Mm. And is there anything about those 5 films in particular? Is there a theme or something that is why they would be there, or is that just because they're the biggest, most bombastic? Because I know that's generally your type, isn't it? Is big and loud and fun.
Well, you can kind of draw that from them. They're all kind of big and bombastic, though, are they really? They're not. None of them are. I think Winter Soldier is probably the more filmy of the lot of them, and that's number 2.
Yeah.
We've said loads of times that you could just watch that as a spy film on its own and appreciate what it is, but I think that they're all kind of similar. But I mean, Guardians is obviously the funniest of the lot the 5 by a mile. It's the weirdest, most out there. Spider-Man No Way Home is obviously the nostalgia factory, and we've already talked about that a few months ago. I don't think there is actually a common theme there, really, other than the fact that they're all very good. I don't think there's one kind of overarching. Oh yeah, I like this because it's the mise-en-scène and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't apply to these films, does it? It's just they are what they are. And then when I mean, that took me an hour when I did that before Christmas. trying to put them into order of my preferences and stuff. And I've looked over that list quite a few times, and there's not been many movement up and down at all. So I think this is not in that top 5. I'll say it now, but I've got an idea where it can go.
Okay, Matt, have you got 4 or 5 films that you really like in the MCU?
Do we count Deadpool in this list?
Not yet.
It's not in the phases of in the MCU phases, but it is Marvel property. So, but if we're talking about just the phases as we know it, I don't know what goes in at my number 5. To be fair, because the ones I really like, and the rest I think are quite disposable. To be honest,
yeah.
I'd probably say Spider-Man: Homecoming is my number 5. I really enjoyed it. I just think it was fun. It wasn't serious, but it wasn't the silly bollocks that No Way Home was. Then probably Doctor Strange. Then Guardians of the Galaxy. How many have I got left?
2 spaces left.
Then Civil War, and then Infinity War. Endgame doesn't make that list, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think the same, to be honest, with Endgame. Obviously, every time a Marvel film comes out, everyone on Twitter talks about how great Endgame is, and that's like the pinnacle. And it's really not. Like, it's just about top 10. It's fine.
It's like 12 for me.
I mean, yeah, I think that's fair. Like, it's not that great a film. I'd only put 3 down for mine that I think my 3 favourite films would have been Guardians of the Galaxy, Black Panther, and Thor Ragnarok for me. And I think that the reason that those 3 stand above the rest personally is they're the 3 that I feel are the least Marvel movie machine kind of films. They're the ones that, if you think of it like an ice cream, every Marvel film is vanilla ice cream. Those 3 feel like the ones which have got a little bit of a director inflection to them. They're like vanilla with strawberry or chocolate sauce on top, because you can see that Guardians is a James Gunn movie, that Panther is a Coogler movie, and that Ragnarok was a Taika Waititi. And I think that's why Doctor Strange, this one that we're here to discuss, Multiverse of Madness, I think that's why it's pushing for like the top 10% for me, is because it's a very Sam Raimi film, which is not what I was expecting going in. Obviously, Stu, you avoided all of the trailers going into this, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
So what were your expectations? Having seen nothing of it, did you have any expectations?
The only thing I'd seen was the very brief teaser at the end of, was it No Way Home? Or was that something else? Or was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Morbius. I can't remember. They're all, whichever. When they annoyed me with that, bringing that on, that was all I'd seen. And so, knowing that she was in it and it was carrying on from WandaVision, I thought, oh, okay. So but again, we'll talk about it later. But I didn't expect it to go where it went. I kind of had a bit of knowing that she was in it and watching and quite enjoying a lot of What If as well, and timey-wimey kind of in general, and the fact that I loved No Way Home and that concept of the 3 Spider-Men and the kind of all in one place. I went in not really expecting to expect anything. That it doesn't really make much sense trying to explain it, because I went in with as much of an open mind with this one as I ever have in any of them. And I was very surprised in places where it went. Let's put it that way.
Matt, you've been very vocal on this podcast about your skepticism of multiversal stories.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have been pretty apprehensive going into this one, surely.
Oh, 100%. Like, I had the echoes of No Way Home ringing in my ear, and I had all of the issues that I had surrounding the way that movie ended, and how time travel in general in storytelling, not just in Marvel, is a really easy get out of jail free card for poor
Yeah.
storytelling. So I just feared that it would be exactly that, and it would just be a proper clusterfuck of, let's just throw the paid version of Photoshop at it, to put it in simplistic terms. We've got all the gadgets and gizmos. We can just make this an absolute visual spectacle. Fuck the story. Story doesn't matter, because this is Marvel and this is what we do. That was my anticipation going into it, but the simplicity and stupidity of the subject matter was actually one of its biggest strengths in this film, because like it oddly works like seamlessly well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's got a point that I hadn't really thought about putting in this, because it's more of a Moon Knight thing. But it kind of feels like over the course of Phase 4 that Marvel have tried to move to more character-based stories, where they're trying to use characters to push the story along. Whereas this one actually felt like this was just characters in a story that was happening. So they've done it the other way around. And I feel that it works a lot better in this movie. Like, as a character study, Moon Knight was fine, but there was not enough plot there to push this along. This was just a plot-driven movie, and it worked perfectly for a comic book film. They didn't want to make it some deep and meaningful nonsense, because it didn't need to be. It's a bright, colourful Marvel comic book. Like, if you want deep and meaningful, you do generally have to go more towards your Batman of the world to get that. When it comes to Marvel, you don't need that. You just need surface level sheen, and that's what this movie was. There was a lot of good to it. I thought the visuals in this movie were quite spectacular in points. One of the big criticisms that's been coming out about this film, though, is there's not a lot of multiverse madness going on here. The only real other multiverse that we got to see to any great length of time was the... How do I say this without spoiling it? Was the universe where we meet Bruce Campbell's character when he makes his cameo appearance, because obviously it's Sam Raimi, you've got to have Bruce Campbell in there. And the big difference in that universe was that they cross on green. No, they cross on red and stop on green. Like, it looked basically like this world. Could they have done a bit more, do you think? Could we have seen a little bit more multiverse than just... We got that one, and then we got the one that was collapsing in on itself, which, again, looked pretty much like the universe that we see. Matt, do you think they could have given us more, or was that enough?
I think because we had that montage where they're falling through the different multiverses, and it's verges on like Steamboat Willie and all different,
the Paint universe as well.
Yeah, like shapes and sizes. I think because of that, it's just about got away with it, really, in terms of showing that there's an infinite possibilities of the universe. I mean, yeah, it probably would have been quite fun if they'd have spent a little bit more time in each of these, but it's a means to an end, really. It's still like a 2-hour movie. Don't know how much more they would have wanted to have shaved off to make way for what is something that's probably throwaway and more of like a visual pleasure than a plot device.
Apparently, the original cut was 2 hours 40. They came back and did some reshoots, and the reshoots actually ended up editing out a shitload of stuff, getting it down to about 2 hours 5, I think it ended up at, for the main story, not including the trailers. Stu, would you want to see more of the multiverses, or were you happy with what you were given?
Yeah. We're still in this weird situation, Amy, where you don't quite know how much was filmed pre-COVID and then during, and where things were outsourced with the CG and wherever. And I think under normal life, we might have actually seen more. But again, I was surprised how short it was, because we've kind of got accustomed now to our Marvel movies are at least 2.5 hours long. That's just what they are. And this being shorter than that was... I mean, I watched it in 4DX, so I was kind of glad in the end that it was only 2.5 hours because I was completely battered and bruised and thrown around. But yeah, it reminded me a lot of Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, where especially the jumping through the dimensions and stuff, and you saw all the different ones, not just Paint World and the other ones as well. I thought that was very similar to that game. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen more versions of each character than we got, because the whole in the Multiverse of Madness kind of makes you think, okay, we've had 3 Spider-Men a few months ago. Now, how many of Doctor Strange are we going to get? And it was kind of, well, okay. We didn't really get that much.
No, we got the one from the very beginning, which isn't a spoiler because we've seen him in the trailer. We've got the one from the collapsed world, which again is in the trailer. And we got the main Strange. So did we only get the 3 versions of Strange? I can't remember another one. Oh, and there's obviously the one from the land that they fall into as well, isn't there? Who we briefly meet. So yeah, there isn't a lot of it, but I think that they, like Matt said, they could have gone on and done more, but it would be at the expense of making it a much longer film, and I don't think that would have made it very interesting personally. The story, at a very basic level, is that America Chavez is being chased by an evil power wanting to take her powers away. Chavez has the powers across the multiverse until she runs into Doctor Strange in the main Marvel universe, and together they try to save her. What did you think of, I think it's pronounced Xochitl Gomez as America Chavez? Were you a fan of her? Because she only had limited screen time, but I thought she was, I don't know, like you did, Jen. I genuinely actually felt for the character when we get a bit of her backstory with her powers causing the disappearance of her parents and stuff. Matt, what did you think of Sophie as the actor and America as the character?
Well, I think as an actor, I mean, she played her role pretty well in terms of kind of a young innocent teen. There are a lot of X-Men vibes to her character, no pun intended. And there was an element of her not being comfortable with her powers, it being more of a curse than a blessing, and everything else. There was a genuine jeopardy to her character because we see it in the first scene, essentially. So actually, I think she played it off really well. Like, you care about this character because like the start of bloody Casino, what's about to happen. You know that at some point, she's going to face her untimely demise. But obviously, the film plays itself out as it does. I think it was an interesting character for someone that is completely new to my eyes. At least I haven't got a clue if she's in the comics or not. Very quickly, it's established what she's about and what her motivations are and why she's doing what she's doing. Again, pretty well scripted and played out, unheard of in this franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. Stu, what were your thoughts on Sochi and America?
Yeah, I'd actually she reminded me a bit of Rogue. That kind of, that vulnerability of not knowing how to control her powers and not really wanting her powers either. Again, which isn't explained what she is and how she can do this. If this gets fucking linked into Eternals, I want to scream, because I was expecting it, because I thought, well, we haven't had one of these before. What is she? What kind of is she? A celestial being? Is she just a one-off? But yeah, I thought she was fine. Like Matt, I had no idea who this was. No clue. I know Ms. Marvel that's coming up soon. Obviously from the Avengers game from a couple of years ago. But America Chavez, not one iota. No. But yeah, I liked it. I liked it how that she had a bit of sass about her as well, and she really couldn't give two shits about who he was. And
yeah, I enjoyed her performance as well. I thought she was good. The character America Chavez, she is from the comic book. She does have a history. I don't think she's an old character. I think she's relatively new to the MCU. It does look like they're going to eventually tie her in with Ms. Marvel, as you've just mentioned, Stu. And we're probably going to be heading down the Young Avengers route. So I think you're spared from any more Eternals bollocks, thankfully. So I don't think that we'll be revisiting them anytime soon.
Before we go any further, and before I forget, how insane did Avatar 2 look in terms of visually?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've said millions of times I
Get on
don't
board.
give a fuck about it,
Get
but
on
it
board.
looks, like, aesthetically fucking gorgeous. I might go and see it
I was
just for that.
stunned. I was stunned by it. Like, I was like, wow, this looks sensational.
We need to do this one properly. This needs proper IMAX, not super screen. It needs IMAX and Dolby Atmos.
Probably right, to be fair.
And a Five Guys as well. Full day out in Birmingham.
I think if we move on to spoilers now, so if you're listening, check the description and you can skip ahead towards the end part where we sum it all up. One character obviously needs to be discussed is Wanda. Is this a Doctor Strange film or is this a Wanda Maximoff film? Because it does seem to be more about her and what she is going through than it does about what Strange is going through. Matt, what do you think?
Having not watched a second of WandaVision, I was appreciative of all of the Wanda-ness of this film and actually understanding her motivations and everything else. But like every good comic book film, it should be about the villain anyway. Like, really, like, you should understand them and why, and then have your triumphant hero at the end anyway. But her arc in this is it's so simplistic, but that's why it works so well. Like the mother just wanting to do right by her kids, however imaginary, is completely believable. She might not be believable as a witch and that whole story, but actually her baseline motivations and emotions are completely believable, and that's what made her so great as a villain. Like, she was excellent as a villain. I was really, really, for a character in the movies prior to this, a character I didn't really give two shits about, if I'm honest. Completely turned around in this.
I think that she's the most inconsistently written character in all of the films. Like, you'll understand my reference here, Matt. She's the Big Show of the Marvel franchise because she is whatever the director of whatever film needs her to be. She can be a good guy one week, can be a bad guy the next week, and then a good guy the week after, because she can do a bit of everything. And that inconsistency has just made her anesthetic to me, just puts me to sleep. I just don't find her an interesting character until this film. Like, I was genuinely, like, almost rooting for her to burn down the multiverse because you felt for her, like, her motivations, as you said, they were identifiable human traits, and she's not really a human. I mean, I don't want to get into the whole Marvel mutant stuff as is, but she's not. She's a witch, so they did a really good job of humanising her character, I think. Stu, you watched WandaVision and, like me, hated it. How do you feel her story arc fed on? Because obviously at the end of WandaVision, she accepted that she didn't have the kids and that Vision was dead. And then obviously she's now back because she wants her kids. So there is something of a little bit of a repeat, stepping on the toes, is there, or do you think there's more to it?
No, I think I did say that in the GC that that he would have to watch WandaVision and suffer through WandaVision to enjoy this properly. But then, because it does kind of jump into it like it does, I think it does a very good job compared to how the MCU series are a viable option if you want them, but they're not a necessity yet. Where I thought this very much would be for someone who hadn't seen it, but for us who did suffer through that nonsense, especially like we said before, if them first 2.5 episodes didn't exist, it'd be fine. But the fact that we had to suffer that hour and a half of shit makes it it can't be any worse than that. So again, we didn't see that stuff. Doesn't appeal to us. But I think the fact that what happened in WandaVision with the Agatha bollocks and all that kind of, and the Darkhold kind of warping her mind, and when you see her banishing herself to the cabin in the woods,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, yeah, well, she's gonna turn into a loner and she's gonna go mad. You can see exactly what's gonna happen here. Because she'd already started going mad, and as she was hovering at the end of the last episode before she went into the cabin, when she turned into the Scarlet Witch, you think, okay, here we go then. So it made perfect sense, and this film was a sequel to that series. It just was.
Yeah. Matt, has this film given you any? What's the word I'm looking for? Has it made you want to watch WandaVision at all?
No,
I didn't think it
because
would.
because I've got my conclusion, and I didn't need to spend 10 hours. Like, that to me is even more a damning an indictment of what I understand is a pretty poor show anyway. That the fact that you can summarize it for me in the group chat in a paragraph, and then I fully understand it when I get to the film, when I get to the movie, like, okay, yeah, I get it. I understand. I don't need to have spent 10 hours watching this. Whereas, there are other things that, like, we had in our most heated episode about Spider-Man, where I was like, you shouldn't have to spend 50 hours watching additional stuff to make sense of one film. Whereas actually, I didn't need to be fair, with a simple enough explanation, it wasn't needed. So no, I've got no desire to watch WandaVision on the back of it. But what this movie has done, it has jump started my next 5 Marvel films before I get bored of them again. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm content enough to carry on watching them at this point now.
You know what?
Yeah.
You would probably now enjoy Moon Knight now that it's finished and you can just binge it. Yeah, you will.
No,
it's just ignore him. Because it's different enough to the other things, and it's weird enough that you might get something out of it more than any of the others.
Right, the series is called Moon Knight. Yeah. Have a guess how long on screen Moon Knight actually appears, Matt. There's 6 episodes, 45 minutes each.
45 minutes each, 6 episodes. So he's got at least half an hour, if not an hour, of Moon Knight time, surely.
It's about half an hour across the whole series. You've got 10 minutes at the beginning and you got about 15 to 20 at the end. That's all you see of Moon Knight. It's just not that interesting, unfortunately.
Are you talking? What are you talking about, though?
Actual Moon Knight, the man in the white suit.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. He's hardly in it. But it is a good performance by Oscar Isaac because he's great in everything, with all due respect to him. Moving on, anyway, what was the next point? The Illuminati. This has also been something that's been very divisive amongst the fans of it, because the Illuminati come in, and obviously we've all seen the Suicide Squad, but spoilers for Suicide Squad. The first team you meet in the Suicide Squad get killed instantly. And that's what happens to the Illuminati. They get brought in. There's all this fanfare. We get to see Monica Rambeau as Miss Marvel, or Captain Marvel, sorry. We get Captain Britain, Captain Carter, whatever you want to call her. Charles Xavier, Reed Richards, all come in, all get butchered within seconds as soon as they meet the Scarlet Witch. A lot of people have really hated it.
You're missing the guy with the fork on his head as well.
Oh, fuck, Black Bolt. I had scrubbed the Inhumans from my memory banks.
Yeah. But no, I think that there's probably about 100 people in the entire world watch that series. And even I can admit it was awful. It was god awful. It was the worst one of all of them.
Yeah. Really shockingly bad.
I mean, the fact that they brought the same actor back, my little the gaspometer was bigger for that. The fact that they'd done that than bring anyone else back. It's unreal.
What did you think of it, Stu? Like, overall, of them bringing the Illuminati in and then immediately offing them. What did you think of it?
I thought it was funny. I mean, obviously, the whole Professor X thing had been kind of spoiled by the trailer. Even I knew that. because he was talking and he's saying he wasn't in it. And you think, well, yeah, we know that you are because you're saying that you're not. So, and your voice is there. So, but I didn't expect them to go like, even though What If tied it up with Captain Carter, the fact that they brought her back and did her justice. I mean, she didn't do herself justice in that series anyway for her awful voiceover work. So for it to come back and then be brutalized like she was, that was that was unexpected.
I can do this all day and then gets cut in half within 5 seconds.
And Bolt being maimed in it, that must have been a nod to X-Men Origins Wolverine. It has to have been. Well, what they did to Deadpool. Because it was exactly the same. So. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the first thing I thought of as well.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of with that. And obviously, Charles walking in a mind palace and being killed there. Yeah, fair play. And a nice secondary death for him in the space of 5 years.
Yeah.
It's the same character.
This is the biggest flaw about this film was how the Illuminati was handled in this, because like we've got Endgame and we've got Infinity War and we've got everything with Thanos, and these are meant to be the mighty saviors that save the world from their version of Thanos, and we see him dead, and I can't remember, was something poking through his stomach or something like that in one of the scenes, and then so we have to believe that they are the best of the best, and then to be killed off just straight away like that, and even the corpse of Xavier back to life to be killed again because he looks horrendous. Patrick Stewart does this. I know he's old, which is absolutely fine, but it's just I really, really didn't like the way that was handled. That was probably the worst bit about the film, in that what was meant to be our heroes in this were just carted off so quickly. It's like it made you instantly not give a shit about this world anymore because they're not up to par with our Earth's mightiest heroes, or whatever the fuck they're called. So that was a little bit that was a bit disappointing, to be honest. I don't know how you felt, Andy, about it, but like maybe I'm thinking into it a little too much. I don't know, but.
See, when I first watched it, when I came out, my immediate thought was that was absolutely pointless. They could have got rid of that whole scene and it wouldn't have changed the film. And even thinking about it now, they could have got rid of the Illuminati and it wouldn't have changed anything. But I really enjoyed it because it's pissed so many people off. And they're annoyed for the same reason they were all fucking wanking themselves silly over Garfield and fucking Maguire coming in. It was just a fan service scene. Like, you didn't need Garfield and Maguire to come in Spider-Man. They could have had Nicolas Cage's Spider-Man Noir and fucking Spider-Pig. Like, you know, they didn't have to have those, but they did, and everyone went apeshit for it. There's been such a call over the years for John Krasinski to come in as Reed Richards. They bring him in and then fucking kill him immediately. And part of me feels like, after Sam Raimi's experience on Spider-Man 3, with not wanting to bring in Sandman and Venom, but being forced to by the studios, there was a little bit of that to it. A little bit of, yeah, I'll bring him in, but we're going to kill him immediately because fuck you. That's kind of what it felt like. So it completely changed. When I took that on, it changed my opinion of it. And also, it made Wanda out to be an absolute badass, because she is probably the most like devastating creature in all of the multiverses.
It didn't, and I know that was like the means to an end, but that could have been done with more throwaway people that people aren't clamoring for. Do you know what I mean? Like, have her make her way through countless superheroes, but these are superheroes that you would have expected that post this film, you could have had origin stories about. You could have their own separate films about. But why would you give a shit about them now? Like the cat's, like the horse is bolted now at this point. Why would you care? What would you care about them bolted now?
Yeah,
exactly.
We've got a Fantastic Four film coming out in 2024, 25, I think. So you are right. Like, why do we really give a shit? Personally, I hope that they don't bring John Krasinski back. I think it'd be really funny after all this time, after all these people going on and on about getting him in as Reed Richards, that all we get is 2 minutes and he gets killed in it. I think that'd just be hilarious. So I think they should just bring like fucking Ian Grufford back in or something. Yeah, just anyone. It'd be really funny.
But Krasinski in general, like I've just evaded him as an actor, like pretty much my entire adult life. I mean, he's fine. He's fine. Like, and obviously he's in a quiet place, but he's not. He's good in The Office, like the American version of The Office. I just don't. I haven't seen a lot of stuff with him in, if I'm perfectly honest. And you know, once The Office got out of trying to be the English Office and it became the American Office, obviously that's when you think it excels a little bit better. It excels a bit more anyway. He'd probably be a bit more like himself.
He's a bit of a soft boy in The Office. I never quite warmed to Jim myself. He was no Tim, was he? So I just couldn't. I don't know. There's something wrong with Jim and Pam. Yeah, Pam. But yeah, Stu, you're a fan though of Krasinski, generally speaking.
Yeah, especially A Quiet Place. When we've talked about that infinitum, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem with him. Again, I did think it was Raoul Coley at first when for a brief second I thought, have they done it? Have they given him what he wants? Have they made his life? And then it was almost like semi-disappointment that it wasn't. But yeah, I don't want him to be in the Fantastic Four film either. It'll just confuse too many people. I mean,
there's a lot of confusion coming out the back of this anyway, because obviously there was no mention of an Iron Man in this world, where obviously we know that Tony Stark started everything in the main universe. So I think whenever you deal with multiverse or time travel or anything like that, you're always going to get that kind of thing. You just have to ignore it and carry on regardless, I think, don't you?
Yeah, because you had Ultron that worked in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Did its job properly?
The explanation is that Ultron in this universe would have been created by Reed Richards, and he's infinitely cleverer than Tony Stark, so that's why he didn't turn evil. But like, there are interesting stories, but I suppose that's what If is there for, to discuss. One thing that I did want to mention, there isn't really a lot to say on it. How fucking good was the scene of the fight between the two strangers with the piano?
Oh man, it was like the second you hear that note, you know exactly what's kind of coming in terms of like the horror elements of it, etc. And then for it actually to be like on musical staves and everything else was just like I had a beaming smile across my face. The closest I've been to like shouting out in a cinema. Of course, I'm not going to because I'm not a fucking idiot. But it was as close as I was going to get to doing it.
It was a highlight of a film of highlights for me. I thought it was so inventive, because it's not something we've ever seen Strange do before, lift words out of a page to throw at people. So it just kind of came from nowhere, but it just fit that scene perfectly. I thought it was incredible. The music in general was great. Stu, was it Danny Elfman? Was it this one? Yeah. Thoughts on the score?
Yeah, I like Danny Elfman anyway. It's almost like a throwback to childhood because of the Batman stuff and all that kind of thing. And it was very Sam Raimi in itself, wasn't it? The score was very Danny Elfman, it matched perfectly as you'd expect them to. And if you played it on its own, you'd say, okay, that's Danny Elfman straight away.
Yeah.
It's like but again, it set the tone for the film. It was quirky, it was weird. I'm amazed that they got a 12A with this in parts.
Well, I mean, you can go really far with horror at 12A. Like when you think back to The Woman in Black, the film with Harry Potter in, that film's fucking terrifying, and that's a 12A. So, like, you can go a lot further than I think that they generally do go nowadays. And this was quite gory in parts, wasn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, and even the sound of the what were they called? The souls later on, when they were coming out after his zombie self. Which the zombies, I thought that was a nice touch as well with the zombies episode of What If. And I thought, oh yeah, okay. So they've already kind of conditioned us to think about zombie versions of themselves. And yet again, here we are.
Yeah.
I thought even with that was very. It was very comedy horror. The soundtrack at that point, which he kind of don't think I expected it, but I enjoyed it.
Mm. Obviously, comedy horror is Sam Raimi's meat and potatoes, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
you look back to Evil Dead, another film about an evil book. Like it was. It's like this film was made for him. I'm really glad that was it Scott Derrickson was it the previous director. I'm glad he dropped out and that Sam Raimi got to get back into this world. Apparently, after he did Spider-Man 3, like he said he was done with making comic book movies because they just destroyed his confidence. So I'm hoping that this is the beginning of more Sam Raimi stuff. Even if it's not MCU, if it's just more Sam Raimi, then I'm delighted at that, to be honest. Is there anything else spoilery before I get onto the final part of the pod?
I think we talked about what was kind of the end bit for me, like the very, very end with the whole Three Eyes nonsense and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Was it wasn't cheap or anything like that. Obviously, you've got to set up the next thing. I get that. Like, you can't, like, no plot can ever truly end, and that is the nature of the machine that is the MCU anyway. And I know that this is like comic book faithful. There is a story there that I don't know about because I don't read any of this shit. But it was just a little I wasn't entirely convinced by the end just because I don't know it enough, and I'm thinking, oh God, what am I going to have to research and watch just to make sense of the next one? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just hope it runs as like smoothly and as linear as this one did, which was a surprise in itself.
Yeah. So obviously the ending. First off, did Wanda die? Do you think that?
She gets crushed under all that shit, doesn't she?
Yeah, but do you think that she'll be back? Do you think she's done now with the MCU? What? Because she's shown to be the most powerful being in the universe. Is a rock falling on her really going to kill her, do you think?
Well, you'd think not, but she'll, it seemed like she'd seen the error of her ways and she understood, and this is now the chance for a rebirth of sorts. Coming out from the rubble, from the ashes as a new character or something. I don't know, but I wouldn't expect it to be the end. It would be quite good if it was. It seemed like a fitting end to a story. And that's where like these things falter, is that you've always got to tinker, you've always got to change the. Is the MCU the Claudio Ranieri of football managers? You know what I mean? They've always got to tinker with what seems to work. But yeah, I hope it is the end of her arc, to be honest. But it's shown that because she's as devastating and brutal as she is, why would it? Seems to make, it's been prophesized that she was going to do all these things. It seems silly that would be the end of it.
It does. My issue, if they do bring her back, and part of me does think they will, is the same issue I have when I'm reading comic books, that when a character dies, I know they're not dead. I know they're going to be back in 6-12 issues time. And it just cheapens death. Like, what's the point in killing someone when they'll be back? And it does feel like it would be a real cheap out if they bring her back after destroying the Darkhold at the end of it.
Yeah,
Stu, what do you think?
They never brought her brother back, did they? He was dead, and he stayed. Well, other than that weirdness in WandaVision, he stayed dead. So they have done it before. When
we'll see. Like, I genuinely, I wouldn't be surprised if he rocks up in the next film.
The fact that she's come out and said that it's hampered her taking out other films, and you think, okay, you're not doing any more than are you now? Which I read today. So I'd imagine she's done now, and it makes sense moving on to the new batch. And you said earlier about Miss Marvel, you got America Chavez. You're probably going to have Girl Hawkeye, wherever she's going to be called, as well, thrown into that as well. So. It's a nice bookend to her story that started all the way back with in the Castle Doom, as it might as well have been. But we even talked about Wong and how good Wong was yet again.
I do like Benedict Wong, isn't it? I think is his name. Yeah, he's fantastic. He was great. The only thing that got me is you could see his hair was like growing in between shots. Because obviously he'd come back for reshoots and his hair was longer in one scene than it was in the previous. But yeah,
Let's not
he's
pretend like
great.
best work wasn't in the IT crowd.
Oh yeah, all day. Absolutely. But that's always my first image of him is this. Oh fuck, what was his character name? I was gonna say Neo, but it's not.
Oh no, I don't know. All I know is that when he goes, he says something like, "For someone that is good at adding multiple numbers together to make one smaller number, you can't put 2 and 2 together," or some shit like that. It's proper funny. Proper makes me laugh.
Yeah, that is class. Yeah. Right, okay. So I've got a few questions just to finish it off. We're now out of the spoiler territory, so no more mentions of Fing Fang Foom or whoever. That's it. 3 questions for you then. We've had half of Phase 4 at this point. Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man, WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye and Moon Knight. So overall, how are you finding Phase 4 so far? Matt, I'll start with you because I know you haven't watched any of the TV stuff. So film-wise, how are you finding it?
Boring as balls.
Mm.
So a bit extreme. I think I think we're still massively in the hangover of Endgame now. It was such a big finale with all of these characters coming together and it ending in the way that it did. That, like, I understand you've got to build from the ground up now, and you've got to develop your characters, and you've got to make it mean something. But it's been a proper slow burn so far. And I don't care enough about any of the characters so far that have come in, bar Guardians of the Galaxy, only because they had 2 great films behind them. Never liked Thor to begin with, to be honest. Always thought they were the weakest stories of all of them. Eternals, shite. Shang-Chi I enjoyed, to be fair, but am I chomping at the bit to see more of it? No, not really. So until, like, that credibility can build up again, which took them 23 films to do, it's just a bit stale now. Like, it's just a bit stale. Whereas actually now with this multiverse stuff, can't believe I'm saying this, but they've got an opportunity to do something different, and that's why it's piqued my interest a little bit.
Matt, you're a Rick and Morty fan, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Or you've watched it. Do you feel like, because Rick and Morty is able to tell a story in the multiverse and just jump around here, there, and everywhere, and you never feel lost with it, do you feel that Marvel could use something like that?
Well, there was an element of that here, really, in that actually Rick and Morty's biggest strength is that it never tries to explain. He just expects the audience just to go along with it, and fuck it, why not? It's just anything can happen, so it will. And, you know, Marvel can adopt that philosophy, really. Let's not insult the viewer by trying to explain it and then explain it badly. Just fucking go with it, have a good time with it. Whereas I think sometimes Marvel have been guilty of trying to find a justification for what they're doing and explain it and then do it poorly, as opposed to let's just have some fun with it, as they did with Doctor Strange.
Yeah, that's fair. It was just something that came to me.
I mean, how many... What is her deal? How many films are we going to have with American Chavez in it? Because this could easily be the link to X-Men and Fantastic Four. Easily.
Could be.
Without the whole question mark of, oh, well, where were you with Thanos then and all that? All the things that could come since with the E film. But yeah, that would make a lot of sense doing it that way. If they used her to bring it in. Maybe. I mean, for me, this is... Black Widow was not very good, was it? Shang-Chi was fine, but again, felt like Phase 1. Eternals, just no.
Enough said.
But then you go from that to these last 2 films. I thought they'd been... Obviously, Spider-Man No Way Home, loved it. This, really enjoyed. So... maybe it was kind of like it was like it was like Leicester winning the league. They'd peaked, but they always knew that they were going to have a kind of a lull period before safety, and then pushing on again for Europe. And that seems to be what's happened with this. these last two. I mean, Moon Knight was different. Loki was all right. WandaVision was meh. What If is weird. Hawkeye is great. So it's been more mixed in Phase 4 than any of the others. I think the others have been. I think Phase 1 was great. Phase 2 and 3 were pretty consistent and not. You could kind of much of a muchness between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
This has been very up and down, and I like that they're starting to do different things. And obviously, with 28 films in now, they're going to have to do different things. But there's infinite characters, infinite universes now, and I'm more excited for watching Thor now than I was before because of the how good the last two have been. So.
That's fair. Because I was thinking about this because with Phase 1, like from the off, they were talking about the Avengers initiative. From the very first film, they'd set out where Phase 1 was going. And then as they went along, obviously they then touched on the Infinity Gems, and then that led up to the end of Phase 3. So it felt like they'd started it in Iron Man and then went right the way through. It doesn't feel like there's been any of that with any of the series or films that we've seen so far. I don't know what Phase 4 is about. There's an inkling that it's going to be Secret Invasion is going to be the thing with the Skrulls, which is all spacey. But we didn't mention one of the post-credit scenes, but to be honest, I don't know much about that to discuss. That looks like that's going to be going more mystical. So it looks like they're dragging it here, there, and everywhere, and it feels a little bit chaotic. I don't know where I'm going with Phase 4, which is why I don't think I've enjoyed it that much until this film, to be perfectly honest. But I don't think I've enjoyed it because of how it's going to fit. I think I just enjoyed it as a spectacle. So for me, I feel that Phase 4 has been very poor, if I'm perfectly honest.
I agree.
Yeah. Second question I've got for you, specifically for Doctor Strange 2, how are you rating it? Give me a score out of 10 or 5 or out of your star rating, whatever you've got. And where does it fit in your overall Marvel movies? Matt, what do you think?
So I think I'm giving it a solid, probably an 8.5. To be fair, it's not the perfect film. Not much is. It loses half a point purely for the actors that play her kids, who are the absolute dirt, the absolute dirt worst.
I wanted them dead.
Yeah, I can't think of a universe within the multiverse where I would want them to exist. To be honest, and the way that we discussed around how some of the characters are dealt with in the film didn't quite tickle my taste buds as much as it could have. But there's an element of I enjoyed this because of how much some of the Marvel nonsense didn't enjoy it as well. It felt very much like this was going to rub people up the wrong way. My own brother, he was like, yeah, I enjoyed it, but he was a bit too horror-y. He's not scared of horror. He loves horrors in comparison to me, but he was like, it didn't feel like it fit within the mold of a Marvel film as much as others, and that's exactly why I loved it. I think in terms of it's a top 5 for me. Where it goes in there is anything between 3 and 5, I think. But I thoroughly enjoyed it, and that's the thing. And I came out of the cinema reinvigorated for what it wasn't Last Chance Saloon, because I don't think I would give it that much credit. I watched it because I knew that you two would watch it and we'd want to talk about it, and it's
the pop culture conversation, isn't it? That's why we keep up with the films that we don't really give a shit about.
So yeah, 8.5 for me.
Solid, yeah. Stu?
To be fair, I've only seen this once, and I think thinking about it, this is an issue now with Phase 4. I haven't seen any of them more than once, which you compare to how much I've watched all the rest of them multiple times. Even Spider-Man, I haven't watched again yet because I was so mad that they didn't bring out a 3D Blu-ray. Still hope. But I will watch it again. But and I'll probably enjoy it more the second time round. But when I came out, I thought, well, yeah, this is a solid 7.4. But I enjoyed it perfectly fine. It's nowhere near my top 5. I think looking at that on the old tree, it kind of drops round about the first one, Captain Marvel, round about that kind of 16, 17 kind of bracket. So that's kind of where it's going to stay, I think. But again, that's not saying it's a bad film. Nowhere near a bad film. It's just on how I felt about this film. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But for me, it's not top 10 material. But
fair enough. Yeah. I've got it at like a 4 out of 5 or an 8 out of 10, however you want to look at it. I really, really enjoyed myself watching this film. Like Matt said, it's not like technically it's not a great film as a work of art or anything like that. It's a fun romp, which is all I really want, to be honest, in one of these type of films. It lent into the horror, which is very much my cup of tea. So yeah, it was great, and I'm probably going to put it in my top 5 as well, I think, because it does fit in with those direct to forced sort of movies that are generally the ones that I like within the MCU. So it sort of ticks all the boxes that I like in an MCU film. So yeah, and as Matt said, I am enjoying the Schadenfreude that's coming with Marvel fans not quite liking it. So yeah, it's all good for me. It's all gravy. The final question I've got, complete the sentence. If you enjoyed Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, you may also like. Stu?
Oh God. Buckaroo Banzai. Just go and watch it. You won't just watch it, people. You won't. You'll thank me eventually. It's funny. It's good fun.
Okay, Matt.
If you liked the more horror-y elements than you did the Marvelness superhero of it, but you also enjoyed the comedy elements of it, just go watch Cabin in the Woods, because you'll absolutely enjoy that side of it. A horror film that is a comedy, that is a horror film that doesn't take itself seriously and leans into all of the tropes that's come before it in terms of horror, and you'll have a blast.
That's a great choice. For me, I'm going to say Everything Everywhere All at Once. That's the real Multiverse of Madness. Like, it is proper off the wall. They really do go into the outer echelons of what you expect from the multiverse. These all just look like different versions of Doctor Strange wearing a different coloured tunic in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Even in the trailer, so this isn't a spoiler, they have characters who've got sausages for fingers. They properly lean into the ridiculousness of it all. So that's the film you need to be watching if you want some multiversal craziness.
I haven't seen it yet, so can't say.
It's going to be at our cinema on the 20th of May. It was released on the 13th, but it does look like it's not getting a wider release until next week. So that'll be like Friday for the people listening to the podcast now. So yeah, get on it. Obviously it's very early. We're still only halfway through the year, but that's going to be in the top 5 next year. I can tell now. It was momentous. It was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Next week we are doing a question cast. It'll be question cast number 45, so it'll be a top 5s list. Need to figure out which one we're doing, so we'll let you know obviously when we get there. If you can make sure you've got us subscribed on whatever podcatcher you use, make sure you've got us on the socials at Cage Fighting Pod, and any emails to cagefightingpod@gmail.com. If you've got any idea of any games that we can play or quizzes that we can use, because I'm running out of 1-star reviews from Amazon, please let us know and just drop us an email, because we would thoroughly appreciate it. For this week, Matthew, would you like to say goodbye?
I will say goodbye, but what I also want to ask of our adorable listeners, if you have another podcast that you listen to on a regs that we would definitely get on, so we're not obviously going to get on, I don't know, Gok One's podcast. I don't know why that came to mind.
Why Gok One?
I don't know. I wanted to say
Is that one division?
No, I don't know. It's because you look so fabulous doing that shirt, is what that is. If there's any other podcasts that you'd like to hear us on, tell them, get them to get in touch with us, and let's do a little collabby lab, and whether we can spread the word about ourselves. So let us know if there's any podcasts that we should be checking out, and any that we should be getting involved with as well, and we will make the magic happen. But ciao for now.
Yeah, absolutely. Always love a good recommendation. So yeah, it's a good call that is, Matt. Stu, would you like to say goodbye?
Yeah, and I didn't. This is weird that I have got a Marvel T-shirt on. This is completely unintentional. These things just happen. Yeah, it is short weather, so get them legs out, people. Ta-ra.
It's goodbye from me, and remember, be excellent to each other.